Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is another edition of Miller Public Relations Communications Tips and Advice. And today we have a guest that's going to be joining us, and he's going to talk to us about holding a press conference, as that can be a pretty daunting task for some. We're going to bring in someone who's been doing it for a long time. So, Mr. Kevin Larson has been an Army civilian public affairs specialist for 19 years. He currently serves as the public communications chief at Fort Stewart, which is near Savannah, Georgia. He likes to joke that he's been affiliated with the Army since his birth, thanks to his dad's 22-year military career. And Kevin has also worked as a print reporter, and he has a journalism degree from Georgia Southern University, and also holds a master's degree in history from Georgia State University. And when he's not at work, Kevin's soon-to-be 5-year-old daughter keeps him busy. And so with that, let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Kevin Larson. Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Mark, great to be here.
All right. So, Kevin, I want to jump right in and start asking some questions about press conferences. So I want to lead off with how do you know when it's time to hold a press conference? And what are the other options to consider if you aren't sure if a press conference is the right answer? I think we've all been there where we say, people are saying, hey, are we going to hold a press conference? And maybe that's not the right answer. Or conversely, it's time to hold a press conference, and maybe you need to convince some other folks of that. So could you talk us through a little bit how to know what time is the right time for a press conference?
So it's really situational driven. I mean, any situation could possibly result in a press conference. I mean, most recently for us at Fort Stewart, 3rd Infantry Division, the last actual press conference that we held was when we had a training accident involving a Bradley where we lost, unfortunately, 3 soldiers in that incident. And given the flavor of that situation, the national interest, the immediate media attention that we drew with that situation, as the situation developed, as more information became available and more questions were being asked, and we were just being essentially overwhelmed with media queries, it became apparent that we needed to proceed to that step of actually holding a press conference and talking to the reporters in that kind of controlled space where you bring them to you and you set up the parameters of time, location, who's on the panel that's going to talk to the reporters, and the other ground rules that you establish, like opening statement. We're going to open with a statement, and these 3 people are going to talk, and then we'll open for questions for 20 minutes. It's all just situationally driven. Some situations might not warrant a press conference immediately based on the fact that it might be a fluid situation. We've been fortunate at Fort Stewart that we've never had one, but they say, it's not a matter of if, but when, like an active shooter. When an active shooter situation is ongoing, that's not really the time to be holding a press conference. More so, that's a situation where you're active on your social media, keeping your public informed of what to do to keep safe, what the latest information is on the situation, the incident that's developing. And then once it's more controlled and come to a point where the threat has been neutralized, that might then be the time where you say, okay, we have information to put out, we have details we can release, let's hold a press conference. But it's all very situational driven. It's a very fluid environment. You have to read the situation and know. Another incident on Fort Stewart, we had a tornado tear through our housing area, took down 2 homes. Fortunately, no one was hurt. No one was hurt at all. No injuries, no deaths. It was just grace of God that this tornado, drove pine needles into sheetrock just straight on like darts. Nobody got hurt. That situation quickly, because it was so fast and so rapid, we immediately pretty much had the media on scene within minutes of that tornado having left. Fire department, police set up the instant command post. I gathered the media at our link up spot and brought them on. And then later that evening, we had a pretty much impromptu press conference with the garrison commander. And I think this kind of leads into your next questions of, what do you do to get ready for that? But it was very impromptu, very much off the cuff. So it's all very situational, all very fluid, depends on what you know and also the personalities you're working with.
So it's definitely not a black and white something you could write down on a piece of paper and say, here's when we conduct a press conference and here's when we don't. It sounds like you really do have to look situation by situation.
Right. I mean, you could have two virtually identical situations crop up over a different period of time, different personalities that you're working with, different leadership, and different client, and one might say, yeah, let's go immediately to a press conference. The other one might say, oh, let's take a tactical pause here and let's just kind of feel our way through and maybe issue a press release or have the public affairs officer or the public communications chief issue a statement, or some sort of holding action before you get to the actual meat and potatoes event of a bigger, larger press conference.
Sure. So going down that road that you started on a little bit there, what if we decide, okay, that the time is right, this necessitates a press conference, it's in our best interest to do it. From the moment that decision's made, what are your top priorities to get ready?
So the top priorities, you want to know, what's your message? What are you conveying? What are you communicating? What are the key details that you want to release to the reporters? You have to anticipate what questions will they ask? What are they wanting to know? Because we all know in our business, it's a habit routinely to ask a reporter, hey, can you give me your questions ahead of time? Let me know kind of what you're going to ask. But we all know, and it's their right, absolutely their right, to not stick to that script. They can come out of left field with whatever question they want to ask. And it's up to us as public affairs professionals, public relations professionals, to anticipate those questions and know what might be asked that could essentially play stump the chump with the boss. And you don't want your boss to be caught in a press conference, surprised. You want them to be prepared and know, hey, these are the possible questions you could be asked. Is it likely? Maybe not, but better to know the hard questions that could be asked so that you're ready for that eventuality. So messaging, knowing what questions might come up, location. What's the best location? I mean, if it's an active shooter, you're not necessarily going to have access to the installation or to the location where that's going on, nor would you want to bring media there because of criminal investigation reasons. But you have to consider what's accessible for your leadership, for your people that are holding the press conference, that are going to talk to the media. Where can they get to easily? Where can the media get to easily? So, figuring out location, things like that. Those are things that immediately come to mind. Time, when, you have to consider what's the news cycle too. Have we missed the news cycle? Would it be better to wait till tomorrow? We live in a 24-hour news cycle though, so maybe waiting might not be the best. Waiting for the news cycle to come around. So those are all the things you have to consider and present to your leadership, present to who's going to do the press conference, to give them all those viable courses of action so that they can make a decision then based on what they want to do.
Now, with that, you mentioned a couple times there making sure that the person doing the press conference, the spokesperson, is going to be adequately prepared, both for questions, but also prepared properly logistically, that you're supporting them with the right location. But could you talk a little bit about choosing the right person or people to be at the press conference and making the decision of who goes in front of that camera?
So that too, very situational, very fluid, depends on what you're dealing with. For my own experience, if it's a more installation quasi-city flavored situation, that'll usually be the garrison commander who handles that, who's essentially a city manager. If it's a more bigger issue, like the training accident I mentioned, that's a more commanding general situation where he or she would talk about the incident. And that's essentially like the mayor of the city, going in front of the media to talk about an incident. So it's all dependent on how big the incident. Also, personalities play into that, like with the tornado that went through post. The senior commander, the general, he was at the incident command post. Garrison commander was obviously there as well. And the senior commander deferred to the garrison commander. So the mayor told the city manager, hey, you're going to be doing the press conference, get in front of the cameras and talk to them. And the personality of that particular garrison commander, he required very little prep. He was very easy to work with, very well spoken. And we're fortunate right now. We have a garrison commander who's very similar. He's also very easy to work with. Requires little prep, but you got to read your person that you're putting in front of the camera. Are they a planner, or are they more shoot from the hip? And each has its benefits, but then you also have to consider, well, yeah, maybe you are a shoot from the hip kind of person, but you still need to prepare. And for a more serious topic like that training accident, it's good to hold a murder board where you essentially get public affairs professionals together in a room. You get the people that are going to be doing the press conference into a room around a table, and you ask those hard questions, and you essentially play reporter to that person, and you prep them, and you do a mini press conference. Essentially, it's a training exercise to prepare for the real event. You're at summer camp, for baseball, and then you go to the game and you play. So you got to practice. You got to have that murder board to rehearse and get out the ums, the ahs, the awkward starts, and to really nail down the messaging too, what you want to say, and also practice tactics. Like if you are asked a question you can't answer, bridging tactics. Well, that's a really good question, but based on the investigation that's ongoing, I can't answer that. What I can tell you right now is, and then you go to the message you want to deliver. So that's a really good opportunity during a murder board with the PAO professionals, the PR professionals, your leadership, to hash it out and figure out, hey, this is how we're going to run this press conference.
So it sounds like there's some of that training that could be done ahead of time before a press conference is required, and then some of the practice questions or information-based training might need to occur in about 5-10 minutes prior to going into a press conference situation.
Definitely.
Okay, that's great insight. So to close up here, can you share with us your advice when the press conference is over? It's pretty tempting to say, all right, time to head to the house. We did it. Great job, guys. Or maybe that was a train wreck. Either way, but to say, okay, we're done. Let's go home. But what advice would you offer about what to do after a press conference?
Yeah, after a press conference, it's definitely, not sit back and just go, wow, that was interesting, and just watch the dust settle, break down the backdrops, fold up the chairs, tables, get the microphones off the table. And yeah, that needs to happen. Sure. Yeah, you got to clean up, but you definitely want to do some analysis then too. You want to possibly immediately do a hot wash, pull the boss aside, tell him or her, hey, you did really good here, here, and here, but maybe you tighten it up a little in future situations here, here, and here, and they're looking for that honest feedback actually, because they want to get better. They want to do better at press conferences. They don't want to have someone blow, sunshine at them and tell them, oh yeah, you did great. It was fabulous. You delivered everything perfectly. No, you need to be upfront and honest so that they can improve at a future press conference, because it might even be a more serious topic that requires even more compassion and staying on message and being focused. And of course, then you definitely want to ask every single person that came, reporter wise, hey, when's this going to air? When can we expect to see some coverage? And then go out and find that coverage and then analyze it. Did they use your talking points? What's the overall feel of the article? Is it balanced? Is it neutral? Is it negative? And that's where the part that we all kind of need to do better at as public relations professionals, the analysis piece, so that you can take a situation, look at it for what it is from beginning to end, and learn from it, so that when the next press conference happens, you can pull that out and say, okay, so last time we had a press conference, here's some issues we had, or here's what we did really great. And then you've built a plan from there to move forward into the next situation.
And that can probably feed your future training as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, as usual, I always add this plug here. If you're interested or have more questions about holding a press conference or whether or not to do so, and or if you need help building a training program like the ones we've just talked about, check out the services available at markmillerpr.com. And Kevin, once again, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights have been very informative, and I hope everyone found that information useful. And it's definitely been refreshing for me instead of me talking on here by myself. So Again, thanks so much.
Hey, Mark, it was great to see you, brother.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.